Okay, thanks for coming again. As most of you know, I've been trying to do a little series of talks around this book by Reverend Leanne Shutt called Home is Here. Who's looked into the book and read it? A few people. Awesome. So yes, this author, Leanne Shutt, she is a priest and teacher in the Suzuki lineage out of the San Francisco Zen Center. She's also practiced in a number of different lineages, and she has kind of dedicated her teaching career to really incorporating very actively anti-racism and racial healing within her Buddhist teaching. She is a Vietnamese American. She was adopted as a young kid, and growing up in something like Minnesota or Michigan, some small town, she has faced quite a lot of discrimination through her life, and so she has written a lot and taught a lot around how to deal with these dynamics within Buddhist spaces. And I thought her book was really, I took like a whole 12-week or 20-week or something course. There were 12 courses, 12 classes with like 10 other affinity group meetings. It was like a whole months long process of really digging into this book. And I've given now maybe 4 or 5 talks to try to capture some of the essence of the book. And she's going to be talking with us next week. So, trying to ramp up to her visit with us. And so I thought today, you know, we haven't even scratched the surface with all the things the book talks about. So I feel a little bit rushed through it. But I just kind of jumped to the last chapter to try to catch some really solid nuggets to talk about today to kind of wrap up this whole series that I've been talking about, and hopefully it'll prepare us for her talk next week. So I've been playing snippets from the audiobook, and so I'll just kind of play some of the things that popped out at me from the last chapter, and we will see where it takes us. So we're going to share computer audio. And so this first bit, okay, yeah. Turn up the volume. Hopefully y'all can hear it.
Is my second language. I've always been fascinated by the meaning of words. Oppression is the noun of oppress. It's from the Middle English, oppressen, to put pressure on, crush, burden, overwhelm, which, from its Latin roots, means to press on, stifle, overpower. As a Vietnamese American woman, these words really describe my experience. Pressure, crush, burden, overwhelm, stifle, overpower.
So let's just take a look at that. So we're talking about oppression. I love that she kind of takes it into this general realm. So I want all of us to just take a moment to really resonate for yourself your personal experience with being pressured, crushed, burdened, held down, all of these synonyms that she must have pulled from a dictionary or something. This experience of oppression, we all have it, right? Maybe for some of us, it's racial oppression. Maybe for some of us, it's the oppression of mental illness. Maybe it's the oppression of an addiction, the oppression of abusive parents or an abusive partner. We've all experienced this general sense of being held down, crushed, burdened. And I think a big gist or a big theme in this book is her encouraging us to really get in touch with these feelings. to see them not only as they affect people of color in a system of white supremacy, but also to get in touch with our own. Resma Menakem, who's like one of my favorite authors around this stuff, he says for people of all races, one of the most important things is to get in touch with how injustice and oppression, inequity has affected all of us. And not just us, but our ancestry and our lineage. We're all living and dealing and processing oppression in different ways. And I want to take this opportunity to quote, what's his name? Who's the football player who's become kind of like a pop political social activist? Does anyone know who I'm talking about? Who's it? No, not Kaepernick. He's got his own show. Someone else say?
Strahan?
No, it's not Strahan.
The actor Terry.
I should have looked this up.
Which team does he play for?
Oh, now we're getting into his bio. Gosh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's like a Spanish last name. Anyway, he's weighed in ever since 2020. He's weighed in a lot, and he's really wise and just says the greatest things.
Cam Newton.
No, it's not Cam Newton. He's retired. Yeah. Ochoa or Ocho. No, it's not.
That's what you're saying.
Ocho Cinco. Anyway, the quote that really changed everything for me, he's like, look, we're not saying that white people don't suffer or experience oppression, or that even that your life is better because you're white. What the anti-racist movement is saying is that if everyone's got their suffering pie, you don't have a slice in there that is caused by racism. You may have a slice in there that's caused by a million other things, and it may be a bigger pie than mine, but you don't have a race pie in there, in your suffering pie. And that's just such a beautiful, clear way to connect that we're all sharing in dukkha, suffering, oppression. And for some of us, in a country and a capitalist system that is pretty much built to benefit some people over others, we just have to acknowledge that people have been given this slice of suffer, this racial slice of suffering pie, for no good reason. So, oppression, be in touch with how that affects you, and that will help radiate empathy for everyone else. Let's go on.
These words describe all systems of oppression. In terms of racism, for many of us Asian Americans and other people of color, if we're not diligent in noticing white supremacy culture's machinations, its impact on us, and how we can work with it, we can internalize it, believing that we are fragmented, even broken.
So this is a very crucial issue. If we don't understand and look at and open up and investigate the ways that we are being oppressed, whether it's racial or some other kind of thing beyond our control holding us down, then we can internalize it. And this is a huge issue for all of us. And, you know, the reason why I brought this book into this Dharma Talk space, the reason why I prioritize anti-racist work at Sweetwater, is because I do not doubt that there are things about our culture here, things about our power structures, things about how Zen has been propagated in America that reinforce these oppressive patterns. And I've heard from a number of people of color who come here, even though we're all well intentioned and everyone's all about love and equality and sharing and connection and community, that this little thing, that little thing, that thing that was said, the way you do this is triggering and poking these conditioned ways of feeling, as she said, broken or less than. And we have so many blind spots in this area. And, you know, tons of people of color come here and feel very welcome and, you know, don't have that problem. But for me, sniffing out those blind spots is really important. And understanding that marginalized people, be they BIPOC folks, queer folks, trans folks, um, what's the word I look for? People with disabilities, knowing that they are constantly fighting this system that wants them to internalize their own inferiority for no good reason, I think is a really good step. Not that we want to be looking around at like every marginalized person being like, oh, poor baby. Obviously, that's not helpful. But just to be aware of this pattern of conditioning, and not that it's universal, but that there is this phenomenon of internalized oppression at play for a lot of people, all of us, in so many ways. Okay.
In the relative world, locations are specific and historical.
In the relative world, locations are specific and historical. So, just for those of us who don't know, the relative world is kind of like Buddhist jargon a little bit. Um, it basically talks about the reality that we know of separation, of things, of concepts and ideas. I am Bobby. This is a yurt. We are doing Buddhism. We get in a car. There's black and there's white, and there's up and there's down. This is the relative world that we operate in, um, as opposed to, not really, but in contrast to when we talk about the absolute world, which talks about the world of non-duality, where everything is literally just this one thusness. So all of this talk about oppression, community, healing, fixing things, problems, it all exists in this relative world. And it's so important that we pay attention and use wisdom to interact in this relative world. And not to say everything's one, so we don't pay attention to concepts and separations. No, that's nihilism and lazy. So yeah, in this relative world of categories and concepts, locations, as she said, and we talked about this, I think, in my first talk, locations are kind of like intersectionality, right? So my location is that I'm 40, and I'm white, and I'm Jewish, and I live in National City, I'm an American, and so on and so forth. That is my social location. And these locations are specific and historical, right? Throughout time, our tribe, their tribe, our nation, their nation. And all of these social locations have created the karmic causes and effects that create what we are today.
Bringing with them a need for definitions and labels as identifiers. And with that, the whole range from negative to positive ideas grow from being named. We are all labeled. However, when located with numerous oppressive labels and their consequences, those in the down power are crushed, burdened, overwhelmed, stifled, and overpowered more and more with each label.
Okay, I think this is important because I'm sure all of us come up against this a lot. This phenomenon of why do we have to say BIPOC? Don't lump me into a group. Why are we giving labels? Aren't we all just people? Aren't we all just one? Why do we have to give so much specificity and separate ourselves with labels? Does anyone resonate with that? Do you hear that? Do you say that? Do people around you say that? I come across it all the time. Why are you talking about blah? Why do you have to have, race specific groups doing this work? Aren't we all just one? Which, look, I get the instinct to want to go there. But I think what she says here really nails it. Because we live in this relative world where you have to label this berry is poisonous, this berry is not poisonous, just to survive. We have to label things. Because we're living in that world, then we have to acknowledge how different labels have meant different things for different people. And when your labels are in the what she says down power position, then to ignore that, to say, oh, I don't see black or brown or white, I just see people, is to ignore the fact that they've been existing in a system that labels them a certain way. We exist, we are all labeled, as she said. And so to try to ignore that or wipe that away, I think is just ignoring the fact that people are walking around being treated and having different access to things because of the labels that we give each other, that are given to us. It's not even our choice. Think about all the labels you have that are not your choice. And then to be denied access or equity because of that label that you did not choose, problematic.
We live in a world defined by ideas about self and others in ways that are driven by fears of differences and multiplicities, and thus increasing isolation even more, fragmenting us from wholeness. Naming and being with the hurt and harm that's the impact of fear-based systems of oppression takes courage, hard work, and a framework that can support us to find new and appropriate meanings to our complex lives in the 21st century.
Yeah, so this is, to me, just is supportive and encouraging in doing this tough work. Ever since I started giving these talks on this book, I've had a number of people say, I don't really want to come to these talks. Talking about anti-racism is cringy. It doesn't resonate for me. I don't see color. I don't know why we have to be talking about this. We're all one. And I'm sure we've all experienced that. Any of us who kind of dive into this work, it's hard. And it's personally challenging. It's interpersonally challenging. But as she says, we have to name it. We have to look at this stuff. Even if it's wrong. Even if she ends up being totally wrong and all of this, anti-racism stuff we're doing in the 2020s is, eventually will be considered obsolete and, ill-informed or whatever. I think the alternative of not looking at these things, not asking ourselves why are most of our programs mostly white? Why are people of color coming here and saying, I don't really feel safe or comfortable? To not name that, to not look at it, talk about it, ask questions about it, I think would be abdicating, just a duty of humanity. to look at what we're doing and how it's affecting people. Um, and it reminds me, I've been in these kind of social justice, anti-racism spaces a lot, and very often they end up with losing friends, getting in fights, triggering people, losing members. And when I talk to other social justice warriors about it, um, their answer or their response, their encouragement is like, yeah, this fucking sucks. We live in a country that was built on slavery and the dehumanization of indigenous and immigrant people. So, yeah, if we want to fix it, this is going to suck. And you're going to lose people. And you're going to be seen as bad. And you're going to say the wrong thing. And it's going to be awkward. And that is just it. And we take this, very often used metaphor in Buddhism of the lotus flower blooms in mud, right? Lotus in the mud. So be in the mud. The lotus flower may not bloom tomorrow or next year, but just be in the mud. That is service. Be messy. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. If you make a mistake out of respect for someone, that's the best you can do. So I just appreciate that, her naming the importance of going there. Okay, let's skip ahead. So the book is called Home is Here, The Engaged Eightfold Path, or Practicing Anti-Racism with the Engaged Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is part of the Four Noble Truths. So the whole thing is kind of based on these very basic Buddhist teachings and how we can engage them to battle our racialized karma, as the late Larry Ward would say. So here she kind of goes into just a real quick kind of summary of these four engaged noble truths, the engaged Four Noble Truths.
And realizing. We begin by acknowledging that hurt and harm are present. In doing so, we started to understand more fully the causes and conditions for how harm and harming came into being. In learning and practicing with the skillful means of the engaged Eightfold Path, we realized we're becoming more confident that it is possible for us to have individual and collective agency to heal and restore from racialization and white supremacy culture.
Do y'all hear the Four Noble Truths in there? Anyone? A little bit? Yeah, so she kind of says it in like a very kind of flowy, like conversational way. But basically what she says, and this is important for just the whole gist of the book. So the first noble truth classically is suffering, right? Suffering, it's just dukkha, suffering. In your life, you will suffer. And she kind of flips that to say harm and harming. That's kind of the engaged version. Harm and harming happen because we live in this relative world of separation and isolation. But just kind of take a moment to really sit with that. What is the difference there? Just suffering, but harm and harming. People have been harmed, right? Suffering is like, yeah, we suffer because people die and we get sick, and that we have no control over. But harming is like people harming each other. It's a very specific angle on dukkha, or suffering. And then the second noble truth, engaged, or I guess the classic one, is that there's a reason for this suffering, which is our attachments and our desires, our discriminative thinking. But she turns that into there's causes for harm and harming. There are systems in place. There is conditioning, karmic seeds, as she says, that are planted to make us harm each other, to ignore the fact that we are whole, all of us whole and connected. Um, there are systems in place that cause conditions, circumstances that cause us to harm each other. And then the third noble truth classically is that there is an end to suffering. And so obviously we switch that now to there is an end to this harming. There is a way to get out of these patterns. But it takes work, which is the fourth noble truth, the Eightfold Path, or as we see in her book, the Engaged Eightfold Path, which takes all of the elements of the classical Eightfold Path and turns them into how we can change these systems and our own internal beliefs that make us harm each other. That's the best way I can kind of summarize this very basic gist of her book and her teaching. Let's see, where should we go? We're kind of running out of time here. Oh, this is good. Give me a sec. We're skipping way ahead. Okay.
In my first Zazen instruction, Katagiri Dainin Roshi said, "We sit to settle the self on the self and let the flower of our life force bloom." Again, suggesting that everything we need is right here.
Okay, so we follow. So this is actually a story. She's quoting her teacher, Blanche. What's her name? Anyone? The San Francisco Zen. Blanche Hartman. Blanche Hartman was her teacher. This is a quote from her. So yeah, her teacher, Katagiri Roshi, who was a Japanese guy who helped bring Zen to America, has now come out as like a sexual predator with his students. Just scandal everywhere. But he was a renowned teacher, and there's a lot of debate over his behavior, and I just wanted to name that. But yeah, so he has this beautiful quote, Zazen is setting the self on the self to let the life force bloom. And she says that that is a nice expression of everything we have is right here. We are innately whole. And it's our conditioning, the ideas and concepts that we inherit, learn, hold on to, that disable us from seeing our wholeness, from living our whole, true, authentic selves, making us feel like we need to pretend or put on airs. So that's really beautiful, right? Zazen allows us to see that we, just as we are whole and we have everything we need. But
this is beautiful and aspirational. And yet, white supremacy's culture's machination makes this knowledge difficult for all who are impacted by racism and much more for Asian Americans and other people of color. So
this is a tough one. This is a real koan for me, and I hope for everyone in our Sangha. She basically just said that a lot of these teachings of Zen, of Buddhism, of awakening are beautiful, but for those of us who have been affected by systems of oppression that are made to have us internalize our own, dehumanization of ourselves, standards of beauty and cultural acceptance that are controlled by one group of people. Maybe this whole you yourself are perfect just as you are doesn't quite land, or that there are barriers. But that gets tough, because then what? Someone of color walks in and we're like, oh, they're not ready for these teachings. Like that gets really creepy too, and it's not true. Um, so I just wanted to kind of offer that kind of radical approach that she takes, um, just for us to think about. And what is it about our structures here, our power structures, our practice structures, that create barriers for people who are coming in with experience with systems of oppression? And again, some people don't. Some people of color, some queer people, some disabled people come in here and are free of all of the oppressive systems in our country and our culture. And that's, so great. Um, but we also see the opposite happening. So yeah, that last bit is one to sit with and watch for. Let's see. Let's do one more quote here. I guess. All right, we'll do that one. 34, 33.
That are inherent in our conditioned life. We cannot escape the unconsciousness that each of us has, individually, collectively, and societally. What we can do as a response based in wholeness is to not close our eyes to the suffering, the harm, and the harming of our past and its results in the present.
Yeah, yeah. So much resistance to this work is I'm not racist, right? That's the biggest barrier. Everyone here went to the George Floyd rally. I marched with, the civil rights movement back in the day. Um, we're all about compassion here. Nothing's wrong. Um, there is so much of this that is subconscious, both for white people, BIPOC people, people in the up power position, the down power position, talking about race, talking about anything. Um, so much of this is unconscious. So much of this happens in our blind spots where we don't see how people are being harmed. And most times, when people feel harm or disrespect or not included, they just say, they keep it in. And they say, fuck it, and they never come back. Sorry, excuse my language. Um, so it really is work for us to turn the light and shine it inward, as Dogen says. Not just in our spiritual life, but in our societal life, our interpersonal life, our community life. And I started this whole series by presenting a chart. I don't know if y'all remember the chart that gives you 6 steps to take you from an exclusive, potentially oppressive organization or company or group, 6 steps to becoming a fully inclusive anti-racist organization or group. And when you read the various qualities that describe each category, each step, it's amazing how, at least for me, when I read them, I was like, oh my God. Step number 2, we do that. That's true for us. Never would have thought of it. So, and then you go to step 6 and it's like, oh, well, we do that, so we're good. So it's not, it's fluid and it's cyclical and we're always moving and working. But I just think that this point of how unconscious these karmic seeds are, these patterns, these biases, um, it's really important. It's really important. And Zazen, the practice of Zazen, can really help us to open up, not only to discovering our own subconscious, but being open to hear when other people are trying to show it to us as well. And I think that's a really important element of this work. I think it's important for the future of Sweetwater, um, that we're always working to be more open, um, existing in a space of not knowing, so that when someone points out harm or a tradition that we've been doing for thousands of years, maybe is excluding people, all these different things that are coming up, that we really stay open to having our minds changed and having our culture changed, um, as appropriate. So it's hard work. We're in the mud. It's messy. Um, and I hope that we can support each other and help each other with the resilience and endurance it's going to take to kind of stay in this mud. Um, and I encourage you all to jump in with us. And hopefully, Reverend Leanne Shutt will have some more clarification and some deeper reflections on her work next week. I hope you come with questions. I wouldn't be surprised if she opens up with, does anyone have any questions about this stuff? So start thinking about that. And thank you so much for at least entertaining my going into this work. Thank you.